Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
So you've been here since 4 a.m., huh?
I have been. It's been a long morning, Steve. Been a very long morning.
Remember that whole idea you wanted to get into local radio?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, let's. We got Penn State, Michigan State tonight. I will get to that at some point here, because you're trying to, trying to protect home court, trying to get back to 500 in the conference. Obviously, Michigan State is a very good team.
Trying to avenge a 95-point throttling.
But that, next time through is next time through. You start at zero, and I don't think that's a big deal to me. A couple of things have come up. One, the new ESPN TV deal with the college football playoff at $1.3 billion per year. It's a $7.8 billion extension. So they will have the next 8 years, the final 2 plus the next 6 after that. That tells you the value of college football and where football is. So let's give you an idea. If you're paying $1.3 billion, all right, let's see. So that's pretty much Jerry's salary, right? Kind of brags a lot, but that's okay. All right, so what we'll do is so you're going to go 1 point. Let's see. We'll go 1,300,000. We'll do that.
Doing some good math here. People come here. People come for the sports, stay for the math, Steve.
No. It is approximately $118 million per game per year because there are 11 games, 4 first round, 4 quarters, 2 semis, championship games, 11 games. The NFL is charging Amazon Prime $110 million to carry a playoff game.
So it's pretty much the same price.
This is 1.8, but a little bit better than 118. It's actually a little bit more. It's almost 120.
Not bad.
That's the value of it. Now, when it gets to 16, which it eventually will, I mean, you'll see that. Now, when you'll see it, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not an if, it's a when.
And they may take some of this, may take a game or two, and they may farm it out to somebody because of the sheer volume of games. Now, the opening round, actually, they're in pretty good shape, the opening round. Because it's going to be one Friday night game, which will be December 20th this year, and then 3 others on the 21st, triple header. And look, for ESPN, first of all, had an exclusive negotiating window. And another thing that happened along the way was that the major proponents in the room among the Power Five from multiple TV partners have left. Kevin Warren is now with the Chicago Bears, and George Kliavkoff of the Pac-12 is in his final week on the job, essentially, as the commissioner of the Pac-12. I talked the other day about the Pac-12 temporarily standing in the way of a 5 automatic, 7 at-large split as opposed to 6-6. They will get out of the way. And here's the reason why. The Pac-12 can't be one of the automatic qualifiers as one of the highest-ranked conferences.
Because they won't exist.
No, they'll exist. But quietly in October, when the band was still together, they did pass that you have to have a minimum of 8 schools in a conference. So actually, Washington State and Oregon State are actually better off going into the at-large pool than one of the 6 automatics because they will not qualify for one of the 6 automatics. So you could see the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, ACC, American,
Yeah.
or in Conference USA.
That would make sense.
I'm saying, but that's the way it could possibly go if it's 6-6. And that would be one fewer spot for Oregon State and Washington State to potentially have a shot. So they'll come around and they'll vote for it. So it'll go 5-7.
And that vote is expected in 6 days, is when it's expected, February 20th.
Yes.
To be exact. So we should know next week what the deal is with that.
Right, exactly. And I think that it's something that that I think is needed at this point. You're going to go from see, this is what's interesting about, let's take Penn State for a moment. Because there's in the NCAA, and this does not, because the college football playoffs is a separate entity, the NCAA has loosely talked about they'd like to see idealistically 25% of schools get into postseason, whatever it happens to be, which we'll get to basketball in a moment. Well, right now you have 3% of the schools in the college football playoff as a 4. Penn State essentially, under James Franklin since 2016, since the start of the 2016 season, Penn State has probably been in the 5 to 7% range, like one of the top 5%, one of the top 7% on a given year of where they are, which means Penn State's been better than 93%.
They're one of the best.
Right, of the other schools that play college football. And that's consistently, not just like they would have made the playoff in 16, they would have made the playoff in 17, they would have made the playoff in 19, right? They would have made the playoff in 22, they'd have made the playoff this year. Okay?
Yeah.
They'd have been in the playoff 5 times, and they would have been on the edge in 18. I think in 18 they might have made it, actually. So they would have made it in 6 years.
Not bad. Not shabby.
If you had the 12, but you didn't. When you're looking at a sport and you're telling that everybody only 3% can make it, boy, does that narrow down the odds, especially when they don't play each other. Now, Penn State plays others in this, and because of that, I mean, for example, well, let's face it, in 2016 they beat Ohio State, right? And they ended up 5th. 5th? Really? All right. 17, all right, 19, they beat Michigan.
Yeah.
All right. And now you're going to go to 9%. Penn State, again, has been consistently between the top 5% and the top 7%. Since 2016.
So they'll be there.
With an aberration here or there. Well, no, you got to get there. I mean, every team's an entity unto itself. You have to get there. All right? I take nothing for granted. I make no assumptions. Seasons work out in interesting ways.
You know what happens when you assume. So
yes. As Tony Randall properly explained in The Odd Couple. All right. So that's how tough it is in college football. Now, college basketball is 19% make the tournament. There is more talk about expanding the NCAAs.
I have had a question about this, and I'm glad you brought it up because I want to ask about it. In my view, 68 teams is what we have currently because we have the 2 play-in games. 68, as you said, is 19%. So we're at about a 5th of all college basketball teams, 1 in 5 get in numerically.
Yep.
How do you, if you expand it beyond that, you're bringing in a lot of teams, but not quality. Now, I get the idea of you can have this team like a St. Peter's or a Fairleigh Dickinson where they go on a Cinderella run, and it's awesome. But that's because they get in most of the time because they're their conference champions. They're the best of their conference. no disrespect to whoever is the 6th best team in the Patriot League, I don't want to see them make the tournament. And if, let's say you double the number, hypothetically, let's say you double it somehow. You go gigantic. Go for, what would that be, 176? Or no, 136. 130. Yeah, 136. Let's say you get to that number.
Yeah, but no,
that'd be crazy.
You have to think in terms of the 25% I talked about.
Okay.
So what does 25% mean with 364? That's 90.
So you have 90 teams make it. That's still, that's a lot.
That's why I'm sitting here.
Yeah, that's just a lot, Steve. Like, I know. I just look at that number and I just think you're getting college football expanding to 12 and 16 is like the limits of how far you could take it. I look at 64 and 68 technically with the playing game. That's like the limits of how far this thing could get. Because if you are them, how long does the tournament go for? Like 4 weekends, 5 weekends in a row? So
it's 3 weekends.
It's 3 weekends in a row. If you make it a 4th weekend, you're going into most other sports all of a sudden. Like you're already cutting into.
Well, you wouldn't go a 4th weekend because they would take Monday and Tuesday and make those play-in days.
But then you are really hammering a lot of, like, these players are already playing a lot in this tournament run. They're exhausted at the end of it.
Well, first of all, you're at 68 right now. It works beautifully.
Yeah.
Now, when the Big Ten makes a decision like it is made, and I think I know why they made it, and it doesn't have much to do with, in my opinion, men's basketball. I'll leave it at that. Okay? You can start, okay? Because the men's basketball tournament makes money.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about the Big Ten. Big Ten men's basketball tournament makes money. But when you're saying that 15 out of 18 teams get in, that decision is a coach killer. Okay? You want to really make it simplistic? That is a coach killer move.
Yeah.
Right? Because now you do that, and the idea that everybody has a shot to get in because everybody's playing their tournament and who knows, they could have the miracle of all miracles and get in, is there. Ohio State last year played the opening night and got all the way to the semifinals last year before Purdue beat them. Right? And look, I'm sitting courtside watching that game, and they gave it, Ohio State gave it everything they had. But you could just tell in the last 10 minutes, 4th game, 4th day, they were tired.
Loyola Chicago, they made it to the Final Four, and they came up against that Michigan team, and they looked gassed. Sure. They had given it 3 or 4 games straight of just playing their tails off. Yep. They had beaten everyone they needed to. They beat Miami. They beat Tennessee. They beat Nevada. They looked just exhausted. And then they came up against the best team in college basketball that season in Michigan and lost to them. And it's like, okay, great. ACC currently is 15 schools. As things stand, there's probably out of the ACC 6 schools that are going to get into the tournament. Hypothetically, if you added in up those 32 extra teams you said, I'd bet at least 4 more of them get in that are on the bubble currently. The Florida States, Clemson's, Syracuse's, and Miami's of the world. By the way, Syracuse beat UNC last night, stormed the court. Love to see it. But those teams all of a sudden all get in. And then you put the next group of teams, the Virginia Techs, BCs, and Notre Dames and such on the bubble. Like, you're sitting with the big conferences getting almost every team in. So it's like a join our conference, you get into the tournament. Pretty much is how it's going to work. So, which is not what it should be.
Okay, and I agree with that, except I will give you this. Why is the NIT changing its format? The NIT is changing its format. They're still on 32 teams. But they're changing it now where no more automatic bids for the conference champion. Colgate wins the Patriot League but doesn't win the tournament. Colgate is now sitting there, and they would get an automatic bid to the NIT. Okay? I didn't agree with it when they did it, but there's a reason I didn't. And the reason came to fruition last year. When North Texas played, I don't know, who did they play last year? UAB?
I believe it was UAB.
Okay. In Las Vegas. No slight to North Texas. No slight to UAB. there's a reason why America doesn't want to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was they beat UAB. That's correct.
You don't think I know anything? Right?
Hey, I never said you didn't know anything.
Yeah, I do know you had a long morning, and we'll gut our way through the hour.
Mm.
Yeah, but America doesn't want to see it, and they know it.
Mm-hmm.
So guess what? Now it's the top 2 net numbers in the power conferences get the automatic bids. Oh, that's disgusting. No, America wants to see those teams. They don't want to see somebody else.
They want to see Syracuse. They want to see
anybody.
Yeah.
Okay? Big Ten, hey, they want to see Penn State. They want to see Ohio State, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because they've got, again, I go back to the Penn State-Texas basketball game in the NCAA tournament last year. Okay? The center of the floor said March Madness. Automatic, you're going to watch the game.
Mm-hmm.
The front of the jersey, whether they are a basketball school or not, said Texas. Whether you're a basketball school or not, the front of the jersey said Penn State. Okay? The result, 6.6 million viewers for a second-round game.
Yeah.
Right? That's what brand means. That's what it means.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And with all due respect to North Texas, fine program, UAB, fine program.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But they are not brands that bring the casual fan in. You're like, who's playing in this thing? Right? I mean, Penn State played in the championship game at Madison Square Garden against Baylor. They had 11,000, 12,000 people. Right? And the TV audience was huge. Penn State played Utah. It was actually, believe it or not, the semifinal game with Mississippi State had a bigger audience than the championship game. But the audience was up over 1 million. For the semifinal game with Mississippi State, it was around 1 million when Penn State played Marquette in the quarterfinals. It's the NIT. Yeah, I'm not talking about an NCAA tournament game. This is the NIT. And again, because it's the brand name. I mean, Penn State played Notre Dame that same tournament. It was a noon game. It's stunning how big the audience was. St. Patrick's Day, Penn State, Notre Dame. It's the NIT. It's the second round. Wasn't the first round, wasn't the quarters, wasn't the right? It's the second round. The TV audience is really big. It's like almost like 800, 900,000 for a noon game.
Crazy numbers.
Well, no, it's like, and again, we used the gauge of the NCAA wrestling tournament. It was the same day, and that game got more viewers than that did. Right? Because, again, it's the brands. Okay? Long-standing brand names. So that's why when the NCAA tournament is expanded, the at-large pool, everybody says, hey, I think Drake should get in as an at-large. Okay, well, that's great because Drake earned their way in. Drake made it last year, too. Drake may have won the Missouri Valley last year.
I believe they did.
Because Penn State practiced at Drake last year. Both the Drake men and women made the tournament last year. I know that. And Penn State practiced at Drake. So, hey, Wichita State's in. Okay. What time's the Kentucky game? Now, Wichita State may be better than Kentucky, but what time's the Kentucky game? Right. Gonzaga's made itself into a brand.
Oh, yeah.
Gonzaga gets higher TV ratings than any school in the Pac-12.
They're in the WAC?
They're in the West
WCC.
Coast Conference.
Yeah.
West Coast Conference. Gonzaga will get on an average of about, their average about 750,000, 800,000 viewers per game. You know what UCLA averages? 200. That's UCLA. So they're not going to get more money by expanding the tournament, I don't think. Because CBS and Turner have a deal that goes through 2032. They got years to go in this thing. Why should they give more money for it?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, unless like with more games, more inventory, they feel they can sell it so you can do that.
Also, let me add in here just to kind of button this one up. I'm stuck on the idea of adding more teams in. You're going to, again, at that point, 25%. So 1 in 4 teams should make the tournament. Numerically. Of course, there's specifics here and there who gets in because of conference bids, all that stuff. But 1 in 4 teams would get in.
Right.
The magic of the tournament is that, like, 1 in 5 to 1 in 4 is a big jump. And the magic of the tournament is that you do get these teams, these Loyola Chicagos, these St. Peters, where they just go on these crazy runs and they get matched up against the big guy who's really good. I don't want to see Purdue against the Georgia Tech, respectfully, because Georgia Tech is not good. Like, if this year it happened, I'd say I don't want to watch that. I wouldn't. I'd much rather see Purdue go against a Fairleigh Dickinson or someone smaller, because it gives them a shot at knocking someone big off. But if you all of a sudden make it like not even a brand name school like a Georgia Tech or a Virginia Tech, I'm making fun of Techs, I don't know why, but if you make it one of those schools, I'm just like, okay, like they go 500 and they get in because of what conference they're in.
Yeah, the smaller conference schools are the darling the opening weekend. Wow, Fairleigh Dickinson beat Purdue. Florida Gulf Coast beat Georgetown. I was at the game. I covered the game. Then Florida Gulf Coast beat San Diego State. St. Peter's makes its run. Yeah, look at the TV ratings. Opening weekend. Hey, boy, this is great. Second weekend. Lowest rated game of the weekend is always the game that features Cinderella. We found out that in basketball, Cinderella has a shelf life. Lowest rated Final Four game, with all due respect to Mike Rhodes, VCU Butler. I think it got surpassed this year. But this year's Final Four was Florida Atlantic, San Diego State, Miami, and UConn. It's the lowest rated Final Four they've had. Why? Okay, well, Florida Atlantic's a nice story. San Diego State is a nice story. Miami is a nice story.
UConn's UConn.
And UConn's UConn. Okay. In the end, that's not what people want to see. Now, let's look at the Super Bowl. Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes. San Francisco, the 49ers. You knew they were going to break 120. You knew it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they delivered a great game. But it's not, it's the NFL. It's all those years there was. What really helped the NBA, and I'll start with football first. All those games where Brady and the Patriots have played. Okay, Brady brought 2 factors to the table for him. All the people that wanted to root for him to keep on winning, and they love him. And all those people wanted to see him flat on his back staring at the sky because they want him to lose.
Yeah.
Okay?
You're right.
LeBron James. 10 straight finals. LeBron brought people in who love LeBron. They have no idea which team he's playing for at the time or who his teammates are.
Well, we'll talk about LeBron a little bit, funnily enough.
All right. But they watched because there's a legion of people out there that want to see LeBron win. They love him. And there's a legion of people out there that can't stand him and want to see him lose. And guess what they're both doing? Watching. Hey, you don't think the people were watching Kansas City this year? Like, I'm sick of seeing Mahomes on every commercial, the whole thing. I want to see him flatten his back. Go Nick Bosa, go. Right?
Yeah.
Okay? When you've got that, that's when you have something. And when the scenario you're talking about, like, oh, wow, Fairleigh Dickinson beat Purdue, that's great. Then they lose the next game. You're like, okay, that's fine. Right? That's the glory of the opening weekend. On the second weekend, everybody's like, okay, you can lose now. What time's the Duke game?
Yeah. I know. I agree. I don't want to see these 14-14 teams that, like, for all intents and purposes, they aren't even brand names, but they get in because of the conference they're in, and they are looked at more favorably because, like, right now, I know I'm just trashing on Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech, but like Virginia Tech, 14-10, they're not making the tournament this year as things stand. But if this happens, they'd somehow make it onto the bubble. Do you want to see a 14-10 Virginia Tech in the tournament? Do you want to see a 14-10 BC? Not really. I don't want to see either of them. By some grace of God, do you want to see an 8-17 Louisville? No, I don't. I really don't. It'll dilute, like, we're already at a point where there's teams that are on the bubble that are just good enough to get in that I like. It makes sense. But all of a sudden, the bubble expands by 32 teams. You go to 100 total teams. You're sitting at the point where you just got teams that are not good enough to be in this tournament, and that will not make a run because they're not good. I
agree with you.
So,
no. Like I said, they've had something great going with 68.
It's perfect.
68 is not a small number.
And
19% is not a... 19% is a reasonable number to have for your championship. That means 81% are out.
And hearing the idea of the round of 64, you have literally 64 teams and no one gets buys and it's perfect. It's like, it's as someone who enjoys how a nice graph looks or a nice number, it is perfect. Because it's literally, it's four regions. It makes perfect sense in terms of how they format it. I love it. It's great. Don't change it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, Steve. And they're trying to fix something that's not broken. And it makes no sense.
Now, football needed to expand.
Football needed to expand because 4 teams was too small.
Okay, but 3%'s too small. And like we're watching Penn State every year fight its got outs, outs, and ends up in the top 5 to 7%. They're better than 93 to 95% of the teams in college football since 2016. Right? And of course, I mean, James has done that kind of job with this program. When you are better than 93 to 95% of the teams in college football almost consistently, that's the kind of job he's done. Oh, but he hasn't made the playoff. Well, for goodness sakes, 3% make it? Okay, no league is like that. That's absurd in terms of the number. College football has worked at a snail's pace and has had the inability to read the room for decades. Read the room. I mean, I'm not talking about the NHL or the NBA, where like the NBA is 20 out of 30 teams making it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not reading the room. All right. But you can't sit there and go, it's 3%. And I always love this, and it makes the regular season more relevant because there's only 3%. Hey, over here in the back, in November, 4 weeks, by the way, 4 weekends. This year will be 5. Okay? Where you're sitting there, and they're only talking about 7 teams because there's 4. Okay? How many relevant games are being played in November? Sure. Ohio State played Michigan last year. It was a relevant game. Well, there's one.
Like you've got a very small handful of games.
How many relevant games are actually being played? And November is 1/3 of the season. The final third of the season, how many relevant games are there?
Not many.
Right? Now, by going to 12, the number of relevant games are going to be expands dramatically as people are trying to get in. Right? And if it gets to 16, it's going to be even a greater expansion. November is going to be an incredibly exciting month.
Yeah.
Right? Which right now, it's kind of like, okay, you're just kind of like at the end, you're just trying, okay, we're all trying to get there. Okay, I got it.
But like now, going to 12 to 16, perfect. 12 is good. It's going to end up being 16. And again, mathematically, it makes sense because you have 4 groups of 4, and then you narrow it down, so on and so forth. Like it makes sense. It makes all the sense in the world, and I'm totally okay with it. And then if you try and go beyond 16 teams, let's say, this year, would you have wanted to see Clemson play in the tournament? I would not. They were not good, but they would have probably gotten in as 20 if you expand beyond 16. They'd get in. I don't want to see.
No, I don't want to go beyond 16.
But that's my point. Is like 16's like the limit for college football. 68's the limit for college basketball.
12%.
Yes, that's
right?
the limit.
And that, remember part of that 12, the 88% that would be out would include the MACs, the Conference USAs, the thing, things like that. So,
like, would you have wanted to see? And this is the team we trashed on all year, not for any particular reason. Iowa, they're 24. If you expand beyond 16, they get in. I'm okay. I really want to see points put on the board. I don't want to see 2 points put on the board because of a fluke safety, and they somehow get 2 points. So 16 is the upper limit for college football. 68, where it is at, hypothetically 64 for all intents and purposes, is the upper limit for college basketball. Yeah. Stick to it.
I agree. To it. I mean, like I said, I could live with 16 in football, right? Because all you're doing is taking the 4 schools that have the bye, and you're just making them play that weekend, like everybody else. I got it. Now, there's also a wear and tear factor. The wear and tear factor in football is greater. Now, there is a spread here. Hey, you'd be 2 weeks past the conference championship games. Okay, then you'd be another 2 weeks before you play the quarterfinals, which would be New Year's Day. Okay, or whatever 12 days, whatever it happens to be. Okay, right. There is at least enough separation there, all right, to allow some semblance of recovery. College basketball has at least a day between games in the tournament. Now, the conference tournaments, no. I was talking about Ohio State. You could see in the second half. I mean, the mind was willing. The legs just weren't there. And Purdue finally got some separation because they were playing their 4th game in 4 days. Now in AAU basketball, they'll play weekends like that, but it's again, we discussed it a few weeks ago, and it's up on demand as well. Look up Seven Mountain Sports on demand. You can find it there, where it's like Gino Auriemma said, like playing 4 games in a weekend is crazy because A, it's terrible on your body. Yes.
Number 1. Number 2, what good does it do you? Just playing a bunch of games doesn't do you any good because you can't practice and do all the things you need to do. And also rest and recover, because who would have thought, Steve, rest and recovery is a great thing for athletes to do sometimes. Who would have thought? Would you have thought that?
See, that's why I've tried to tell Jerry rest and recovery would be good for him. He said, well, I'd have to sit out. And I said, exactly.
Yes.
All right. I said, be good for everybody else, too.
Did you see this morning the news about the Golden State Warriors apparently tried to get LeBron James from the Lakers? And they weren't the only team either that tried to trade for LeBron. Apparently, Daryl Morey made a call immediately to the Lakers and to Jeannie Buss as soon as he saw the cryptic post of an hourglass from LeBron on Twitter. Within an hour, Morey had called Buss and Rich Paul and Rob Pelinka and said, would you want to trade LeBron? And what was their response? We'll trade LeBron if we can trade him for Embiid.
At least LeBron plays.
Yeah. Embiid's hurt. We'll live.
Yeah, but he also was hurt last year, too.
Yeah.
And
the year before that, and the year before that, I know. But
hurt a lot.
But that made me giggle because they were like, yeah, we'll trade LeBron for Joel Embiid. I was like, yeah, that's pretty fair. They can trade LeBron for whatever they want to. LeBron could leave this summer. Who knows? He could go anywhere he wants to.
I still say that the LeBron play is going to be this. In the end, his association with the Fenway Sports Group, and I don't know what percentage he has. He could have 1%, 3%. I have no idea. But his association with the Fenway Sports Group, which makes him now a minority owner of the Penguins, a minority owner of the Red Sox, a minority owner of Liverpool, stock car racing, whatever. Okay, that's the opening to make the bid to get the Vegas NBA expansion team. And I think that if I'm guessing from 30,000 feet, I think that's let's go with Vegas all the way here. That's the chip he'd like to play. Where, of course, if he could get his son to be with him.
Yeah.
And his son's decision after this season at USC is going to be very interesting because with everything that happened to him physically in the offseason, I give him all the credit in the world for getting back out there,
Oh, yeah.
playing. He's done a couple of good things, but he's also had mostly nondescript season.
He is a good player, but he is not an NBA draft pick yet. If he was pretty much any other player, if his name wasn't LeBron James Jr., he would be told to stay in college to get better.
Yes.
Just get better at the game. But because he's LeBron James Jr. or Bronny, there is that expectation of like, well, he's LeBron's son, so he should be amazing already. I'm sorry, no one comes out of high school looking like this dude coming into the NBA like a Greek god. It doesn't happen ever. The fact that he did is crazy. So
but if LeBron's a free agent, part of the deal, in my opinion, could be him saying, guess what? If you get me, you have to take my son.
But that's the problem.
I'm just saying.
I know. But then
I'm not trying to be a jerk here.
I know. So have you heard the timeline of it all? So this summer, the draft is, I believe, June 26th. LeBron has an opt-out or opt-in on June 29th.
Right.
He gets to wait until after the draft to figure out what he can do. So he can't talk to other teams until after the draft.
That's right.
So if a team is going to draft him...
What, you don't think?
No, but the point is, like, a team could draft... And, of course, trades happening recently of players who were just drafted who haven't played yet. Walker Kessler got traded from the Timberwolves to the Jazz for the Gobert deal. Like, it's been happening a lot recently. But if let's say the Jazz draft Bronny. LeBron's not going to play in Utah. That's not happening.
Right.
But he'll try and say the Lakers or the Knicks or whoever to try and go and get Bronny. Danny Ainge would sit there with a cup of tea, feet up on his desk, and say, what's the offer? The Knicks would say, we'll trade you 2 seconds for him. They'll say, no, we're good. And he would just jack the price up because he'd have the only LeBron James Jr. He could sit there and say, I want a first.
Right.
Even though you just drafted him as a 63rd pick in the draft, I want a first for him. And I would completely understand Danny Ainge doing that. It's the same thing that happened with the Clippers. Kawhi was like, I will come play with you if you go get Paul George. And the Thunder said, oh, so you want Paul George? That's so interesting because we hear that Kawhi might come join that team. We want, what was it, 17 million firsts? We want the entire kit and caboodle, plus that dude who's now an MVP candidate. Like, whoever drafts Bronny would sit on a gold mine.
How many double-figure games does Bronny have this year?
I'm guessing none, maybe one.
He's got 3. Hasn't had one in the last 7 games. He is 8 for his last 25 from the field. Right now, again, we all know what
stats don't tell the whole truth, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, but also USC is on a bad run right now. 3.
Is Collier still hurt?
7,
I think.
8, yeah, they're 1-8 in their last 9 games.
Yikes!
They beat Oregon State, and they clobbered Oregon State, but. His season numbers, now he's played 16 games. All right, he's averaging 6 points, 3 rebounds a game, 2.5 assists. He's only hitting 36% of his shots. Okay, that's it. He has hit 27% of his threes. He's only 62% at the line. All right?
It's not good. It's not good enough
2.5
for an NBA player.
2.5 assists, which is fine. 3 rebounds. And again, I can see him putting his name into the draft. And somebody's going to draft him because they want to play the chip that we've got him and we can sign LeBron.
And it's going to be almost a standoff of all of these teams being like, who's going to take him? Who's going to do it? Because in the back of your mind, let's say you're the Detroit Pistons 2nd round pick, your pick 32 or 33, whatever it is, like the front of the 2nd round. Would you take him? Let's say that becomes the spot where
I've seen him play a couple of games.
But that's the thing.
I've seen him play a couple of games, and I look at him and go, well, you know what? You can see he's a good player. Okay. I mean, now part of me wouldn't mind if he stuck around one extra year because he's going to play Penn State next year. Right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind it. I mean, for all we know, the game's here. Right? Now, once we're done explaining to everybody who he is, then just joking.
This kid, LeBron James Jr., do you know who he is by chance? But it would become a standoff. He would say, let's start at the bottom, 64. And he would slowly go up because teams would be talking. And then it becomes a foot race to try and get him. And then all of a sudden you take him, and you might take him at 30. You might take him in the first round. And then all of a sudden you have not wasted a first round pick, but you know he's not a first round talent, but you know you're getting LeBron with him for 1 year. So you better win that first year and make that worth it. But hypothetically, it's never going to happen. Like it's such a fascinating thought and like thought process to go through, and a thought exercise of like, what happens if he puts his name in the draft? He shouldn't, as we've said. He should stay for another year. He really should. Mm-hmm. Like he's not good enough to play on the NBA.
Well, LeBron could sign a 2-year deal with an opt-out.
Or he could, the 1-and-1s, which he's been doing forever.
Right.
And he can stay for as long as he wants to.
Buy time for his son for a year.
And it's not like LeBron's playing poorly either. I mean, playing well. He
always plays well.
He's playing well. He doesn't have to play as crazily.
He always plays well.
And if you're him, you could sign a max wherever you wanted to, or he could say, you know what, I'll take a more team-friendly deal and go play somewhere else. Because he could do that.
Well, I should not say he has never taken a more team-friendly deal. He actually took less money from Miami than he would have had in Cleveland.
That was how they got him there.
That's something that people don't understand. He actually did.
Yeah. And if you're him right now,
after that, he has taken the max the entire time.
Oh yeah, he'll definitely, if he signs the Lakers again, he's got a $51 million player option. He'll probably opt out, re-sign, get a new deal with the Lakers, and then after that, let's say the Jazz. I'm using the Jazz. Let's say the Jazz draft him, and the Jazz say, LeBron, we want you to come join him, but we're also trying to sign this player and that player, and this is going to be our salary structure. Would you be willing to take a deal? I think LeBron would take a deal. Let's say he gets 20 to 30 million, still a lot of money, but he's like, I'll take a pay cut because he's going to play one season in one place. And I don't know, the dude's got a lot of money. I think he's a billionaire. Like he's made enough money. I think he would not bat an eyelash if he was offered a $20 to $30 million deal to play with his son for one season. He would take it.
I think it would be for him a dream come true. But that's me from 30,000 feet. Because I mean, I've never been in the same room with him. I've never met him. I have no read on him other than what I see like everybody else.
Imagine the Cavs somehow get Bronny. Imagine that would be where he would go to play. Imagine it's next year. Then they still have Garland and they have Mitchell and LeBron and Mobley and Allen and then Bronny and then all these guys. That would be, it would be a storybook ending. It's not going to happen, but that would also be really funny. Is that he's left all these places, but he's always come back to Cleveland. That's where he's always come back to, and it would make sense, and it would be fun, and it'd be awesome, and it'd be a very interesting story.
It would be. Now, college basketball tonight, Michigan State is in the Jordan Center. What's interesting is that what people may not realize, which team has the better road record?
I'm guessing it's Penn State.
That's something that a lot of people don't realize. Michigan State is 1-5 on the road this year. Whether that has any bearing on tonight's game, we'll see, but that is a fact. Walker is a terrific player. I like watching Walker play. Quick, smooth, makes, for the most part, really good decisions. When Hogarth's decision-making is on, everybody on that team is better. When he decides to have a night that drives Tom Izzo
up the wall,
good way to put it, then it becomes bizarro world. Malik Hall inside out is a really good player. Sissoko's been, Sissoko's a good athlete, runs up and down the floor, gets some rebounds.
Yeah.
But, I doubt there's a play in the book for him. Hey, with Q, you run a set with Q. All right, let's get the ball in the Q. Okay. They don't really have to do that with him. The Trey Holloman, who's the backup point guard, offensively, I really like him.
Yeah.
He is a really good offensive player and played well against Penn State the first time.
I was going to say he played well.
Almost everybody that night played well.
Cohen Carr was interesting. The freshman, he was interesting.
You're talking about, but he is a great athlete, about 6'5", 6'6", great athlete around the basket. He can do some dynamic things, right? But the other parts of his game, he doesn't have, other than the ability to be a great leaper and so forth, which is
a good talent to have.
It doesn't hurt you, and it doesn't hurt your team, but he doesn't do a bunch of other things, okay?
But if he can develop, he could be a player no one would really want to see going forward.
Right.
But they are coming off of a big win. They just beat Illinois, 88-80. That was a big one for them.
And Illinois clobbered Michigan last night. I mean, they clobbered them. But again, Doug McDaniel, and no offense, I'm not a big Doug McDaniel guy, okay? I never have been.
Who, Wisconsin?
No, Michigan.
Oh, my bad.
It's okay.
They're all the same in my head.
Okay. He's not playing road games right now because of an academic issue. He plays home games, but not road games. So he doesn't play. Now, does he help them? Yeah, to a point. But that's but they have had to overcome that. But this will be a good test for Penn State. Number one, you're trying to protect your home floor, which then gets you back to 500 in the conference.
Yeah.
Right? Which is big. And Michigan State delivers a top 20 net, delivers a top 20 Ken Pom number, and because they've had enough good wins this year. So I think it's going to be an interesting game tonight, and I think the first to the second media timeout, the first 8 minutes, will let you know whether Penn State has made the adjustments both physically and mentally compared to how they played the first time in Breslin.
That first time you got through 8 minutes and they were down like 30-12 or something. It was an avalanche immediately.
You're just sitting there going, okay.
Yeah. The game started and then they immediately were down, I think 6-0 or 6-2, and then it fell and fell and fell. Right. And it was never even close after that.
But Penn State's playing much better, and
aces.
But they're playing connected on offense, and for the most part on defense, they still make defensive mistakes. And that's not the way Mike's teams play. Mike's teams play a better, more connected defense than that. This is just trying to fit pieces of the puzzle together that had never played before, and that does show up. But offensively, the ball's not sticking; it's moving. And that makes a big difference, and will make a big difference as Michigan State. Now, you need to hit a couple threes.
Well, that was what I was going to bring up. You know what has been the most interesting part to me of this entire thing, this entire recent chunk? Zach Hicks is 42%, 50%, 50% from three. He's making threes.
Yes, he is.
Which is taking all of the edge off. All of a sudden, it's like, okay. Right. He's making 3 for 7, 3 for 6, 4 for 8.
The guy that didn't in the last game was DeMarco Dunning. He made one. If DeMarco can hit, like 3 of them tonight, that'd make a big difference. If Hicks can hit 3 of them tonight, that makes a big difference. Now, where do you find it from a couple other places? Ace can give you 1 or 2. Now you're up to 8.
Could you get some from Jameel, maybe?
Yeah, Jamil's
if he gets hot, he's hot.
If you get 1 or 2 from him, now you're up to 10. Now, when you hit 10 threes in a game, wow. Now it starts to make a difference in what you're seeing on the floor, right? Because when you do that, what do they have to do defensively?
To guard you.
They have to go out there and guard you, which then spreads the floor.
And then all of a sudden you give room for someone named Ace Baldwin, who is super fast.
And then creates space.
Nick Kern will start going to the basket, and then Ace will go to the basket, and it'll just make it
Right, and so
awful
see
for
that's what the domino effect is when you hit shots. That's why you've heard Dick and I say on the broadcast, X is open for a reason, and then once X hits the second one, now you got to go out and you got to guard him.
Yeah, once whatever he made one shot, but that second one goes in, he goes 2 for 2.
Okay, like, now I have to take somebody. I've got to commit to going out.
That was what happened against Indiana. All of a sudden, Jameel Brown I think had his third, and then Indiana clearly tried to defend him better, and they couldn't do it. They had terrible 3-point defense, but they tried to defend him better, and then he was just passing the ball out of it, and then someone was open somewhere else. Right. Someone drove, or someone was had an open 3, and it was just it 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 6 really quickly.
Right, and that's what happens is that's the domino effect. If again, you don't have to take 43s in a game, but you have to take some 3s.
Yeah,
because the point value of the shot, and then the domino effect of what, if you're consistent enough, the domino effect of what it means to then getting better 2s, because now the 4 becomes spread because they're going to go out and get you. Okay? Oh, no, I'll just let him shoot. No, I can't let him shoot. You got to go out and guard him. Well, now the floor spacing changes because of that, which then gives you lanes to take care of things. So that'll be tonight. Penn State's got the home floor. And it'll be at 6:30 this evening. 6:30 this evening. Have you heard the latest take from the 49ers?
Oh, boy.
Let me say something about
I've seen a lot about them.
Let me say something about Kyle Shanahan first. He has done a great job with the 49ers because he's been able to get to the Super Bowl twice. Yes, he lost. But you win a lot of big games to get there. That means he's won 2 NFC championship games. Pretty good. All right? I mean, that last I checked, that's a big game. Right? So all this, the mumbo jumbo that these talk shows do, shows like this, you can't win the big game. Oh, well, you just knock it off. What do you think? The NFC championship game was some preseason game in Tokyo?
It was, Steve. Why are you bringing that up?
It's ridiculous. Remember this. History is one of our greatest teachers. How long did it take John Madden, the great John Madden, to win a Super Bowl?
How long?
It took a long. I started coaching in like 68. 68? And went until 76. And what was the problem? You get to the AFC Championship game, lose to the Steelers. Get to the AFC Championship game, lose to the Steelers. That was the problem. They couldn't get over that hurdle. And then he won a Super Bowl. And then was designated an all-time great coach because they were winning 10, 11 games a year in a 14-game season.
As soon as you win one, all the edge gets taken off of it.
Tom Landry. What was the knock on Tom Landry for years? Takes an expansion team. They finally get to the NFL championship game in 66, lose to Green Bay. Get to the Ice Bowl in 67, lose to Green Bay. Get to the playoffs, mixed results. Finally gets to a Super Bowl, one of the worst ones ever played. And they lose to Baltimore. Can't win the big game. Landry was in his, 12th season as the head coach of the Cowboys? Because, they started as expansion team. And they finally beat Miami. Suddenly, Landry was a Super Bowl champion. An all-time great coach. Eventually came back, won Super Bowl 12. Okay. Had other Super Bowl chances. Steelers beat him twice. But he won 2. All-time great coach. Hey, Shanahan's a young coach. They've achieved a lot. Now, the window of San Francisco to me is open for 2 more years because of the Brock Purdy contract. When you're operating with if you're John Lynch, you're operating with your starting quarterback on a 7th-round contract, which has made a difference. Okay? Made a difference for the Eagles with Jalen Hurts. Now they don't have the same financial flexibility because you got to pay him. I'm not saying it's Jalen Hurts' fault.
But it's like at some point he deserves to get paid, and he's going to get paid.
Russell
and then
Wilson was a 3rd-round pick. Then when he started getting paid, the Seahawks were good, but they were treading a lot of water as to they get to the playoffs, not advance, things like that. I mean that happens because you don't have the financial flexibility to pay the other positions on the field, or at least enough of them to make a difference. But remember what John Madden was. Now, again, as somebody who was alive then, I know what it was like. Madden can't win the big game. He can't win the big game. Well, okay. Well, then he finally won the big game, and he's a great coach. And he parlays that into a great broadcasting career. Tom Landry, same thing. Can't win the big game. Can't win the big game. Can't win the big game. Finally wins the big game. Oh. Okay. Mike Shanahan. Kyle's dad. Can't win the big game. Can't win the big game. Then they beat Green Bay. Wow. And then they beat, Atlanta?
I think so.
Yeah. won back-to-back. Yeah, now Mike's golden. Okay? There have been a lot of people that have been designated over the years that, quote, can't win the big game.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually over time, because they are a good coach and they're surrounded by good personnel, they eventually do win it, and the perception changes just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Shanahan is in that spot right now, where he's won enough of the other big games, right? Hasn't been able to win this one. Bud Grant, great coach, went 0 for 4 in the Super Bowl. Okay? Marv Levy was a great coach. He went 0 for 4 in the Super Bowl. But that idea of can't win the big game, because, of course, being the Falcons' offensive coordinator, he's taking a lot of blame for that. Last I checked, he wasn't the defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No offense, but he was not the defensive coordinator, right, in that game, because the Patriots had to score to win. But the excuses since, and this is where you can now tell that they know they made a mistake. Well, I told the assistant coaches to tell, and I guess Brian Greasy told Brock Purdy, but it sounds like nobody else did. Wait a minute. Of all the teams, and I pointed this out, Baltimore and San Francisco did not have to play the opening weekend of the playoffs. So they could have been playing one of these overtime games against Green Bay. They could have played one of the overtime games against Detroit. Yeah, you don't know how the game is going to play out. Nobody does. You can tell that they were not prepared for this scenario, and they had the advantage over everybody else, along with Baltimore and John Harbaugh. Because in that opening week, hey, guys, after you give it a few days off, I want to go through something, you guys, and we're going to do this on a walkthrough as to how we want to play this out. But the overtime rule is different. If we get into overtime, right, this is how we want to approach it, right? And everything from, hey, let's bring the captains out. Let's do the coin toss. This is what we want to do and why. Okay, these are the series of plays that we want to run in overtime. And remember, defensively, if we take the ball first or we're forced to take the ball first, remember this is what we have to do, right, to either win the game there or do what you can based on what they do to see about extending the game. Right, same thing offensively, right? And they should have had a long discussion with, okay, this has never happened in the NFL before. This format, it's been there. This format's been in place,
but
for
now
3
it's
years.
finally kicked in.
Right after 28 playoff games, it finally kicked in. But they had the extra week at the beginning where they could have taken a day, and gone through this scenario to make sure everybody was on the same page. And it sounds to me like they didn't and had no clue what they were doing.
He said, we asked position coaches to do that during Super Bowl week, but I don't think that changes anything. We shouldn't have had to have meetings during the week to discuss this.
Yes,
they should have.
Yes,
he was like, I don't think we had to have a team meeting. You should have had a team meeting.
Your job. But that meeting should have taken place in the dead week when you had the advantage of the first round bye. That's where you have all the time in the world when you don't know who your opponent actually is going to be to null that situation out so everybody's on the same page. And then when it comes up, say, okay, guys, remember what we talked about when it comes to overtime? Right? Even quickly in a team meeting. Okay, just remember, just in case the game goes to overtime. Remember what we worked on before the Packers game? Right? Just remember, comes into play, just file it away, but it's there. And that they're ready to go. But again, okay, you can tell who's been an NFL coach his entire life. He took the ball. In overtime, where both teams get the ball, you want to play defense first.
You want to score second because then you could technically win it right then and there. You could win it. You have two chances to win it. Either you win it off defensive touchdown or you win it by getting touchdown and even going for it at that point if you need to.
Say they score a touchdown and kick an extra point. I can walk on the field. We're going for 2, which is what Kansas City was going to do.
Oh, yeah.
See,
they were going to win it after that.
He says, hey, we wanted the third possession. Kyle, there wasn't going to be a third possession. If you scored a touchdown and an extra point, they were going for 2. You were never going to get the third possession. You want to know what you need to either extend or win. Okay? That's why you take the ball second in that scenario. That's why every college coach always chooses defense when they get the chance. You have 20 plus years of evidence on the collegiate game, which doesn't have a kickoff or anything like that. Okay, so it's a slightly different thing. But you've got 20 plus years of evidence as to how you're supposed to play it. Do you watch any college games on Saturday?
Apparently not, Steve.
I mean, seriously. I mean, I know you look at college tape, but you're looking at individuals. Do you watch how they coach it on the collegiate level?
Doesn't seem like that.
Right? And Brian Greasy was an analyst on TV doing college games. He knows what you're supposed to do. Right? You don't, okay? You've got all this evidence as to how to do it. And he said, oh, yeah, we want the ball. I'm listening, they're like, you want the ball?
Crazy.
I sat, I've never seen anybody do this before. And he got burned.
And we'll talk more about it tomorrow here on Seven Mountains Media.
Thank you for listening to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a Seven Mountain Media production. Come back at 11 every weekday for analysis of the latest happening in the sports landscape. From college football to European soccer, Steve and Kyle cover it all on Sports Talk with Steve Jones.